Shalom, welcome to the Temple Institute, Mechon HaMikdash, here in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, in Yerushalayim, the holy city. I'd like to start off with an update, an amazing update actually. It really is quite special, this update, and I think you'll agree. They had recently delegation from the Emirates and Bahrain went up to the Temple Mount. Now generally when you go up to the Temple Mount, the Arabs, those of not the Jewish faith, or let's put it differently, those who are of the Muslim faith generally can go up, and I believe it's about 10 different entrances, either 9 or 10 different entrances to ascend to the Temple Mount. Jews, tourists, anybody not of the Muslim faith has only one entrance, and that entrance is called Shar Mugrabim, and today many of us refer to it as Shar Hallel, named after Hallel Ariel, who was killed and murdered by Arab terrorists in her town near Hebron. This delegation chose to go up through Shar Hallel, through the gate of Hallel, which is where the Jews go. They didn't only choose to go through that gate, but they also chose to have the Israeli police protect them as they went up to the Temple Mount. Very interesting. They got up to the Temple Mount, they prayed. And then at one point they decided they wanted to pray in the area of the Holy of Holies, which is also known as Kippat HaSela, the Dome of the Rock. And when they went in there, the police did not accompany them. And they ended up receiving verbal abuse, verbal assaults, harassment from the other Arabs there, screaming at them that they were traitors to the Arabs because they have made peace with the Israeli government and the Jewish people. They went back to their respective countries, and they actually published a response to the abuse that they had suffered and the harassment they had suffered from their fellow Arabs. And they said, thank God, these are the exact words, thank God that the Temple Mount is under the Israeli government's control. And I think that says it all. And I thought it was a very positive message. You know, in the past, I've said some things that I was a little bit upset about, having more people come to Har HaBayit, more Arabs coming up to Har HaBayit for the obvious reasons. But actually, I think this was a positive message that we received from these Arab countries, and we look forward to more of these statements. Now we're entering the rainy season in Israel, and we actually just started to say in the prayers, in the Shmona Esrei, the 18 blessings, in the prayers, we started to say, V'tein tal umata divracha, which means, may God give us both dew and rain that is of blessing. In other words, that it should be good rain and a good dew that causes blessing in our fruits and vegetables and everything else that we grow. And the reason we only started to say V'tein tal umata divracha in Israel is because we wait for the Jews from Chutz La'aretz, from outside Israel that have come to be Ola L'Regel, that came to go see the temple during the period of Sukkot. We give them enough time to get home so they won't have to suffer from the rainy season. So we don't ask for rain until we know that they're safely home, and they'll want to come back next time to Israel. Water, as you know, in general is a fascinating topic. And I'd like to start with a Talmudic source. And the Talmudic source actually relates to the temple, and it actually relates to water as well. And here's the source. It's in Tractate Brachot, the 32nd page, Daf Lamed Bet. And it goes like this. V'amar Rabbi Elazar, one of the great Tanaim, Rabbi Elazar says, Miyam shechara Beit HaMikdash, from the day that the temple was destroyed, a shocking idea. Nin alu sharei tefillah. The gates of prayer have been locked. They've been closed. And he brings a pasuk, and he brings a verse to explain that. And he says, though, Rabbi Elazar says something very important. V'af al pi shesharei tefillah nin alu. Even though that these gates have been closed, and you know that's pretty serious. That means when you're praying, the prayers are sort of being blocked on a certain level since the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, since the temple was destroyed. But there is one gate that hasn't been closed. And he said that the gates of Dim'ah lo ninalu, Sharei Dim'ah lo ninalu, the gates of tears have not been closed, have not been locked. have not been shuttered. And he brings a verse there as well to explain it. I think that's a very interesting idea, right? So most prayers are blocked since the destruction of the temple. But when you pray with tears, it somehow penetrates the gates of heaven. And why is that? And here is the key to this. And I'm actually going to quote one of my favorite scholars, Rabbeinu Bechayai, who's a Spanish scholar from the 1300s and was the student of the Ramban, Nachmanides. And Rabbeinu Bechayai, this is actually, according to the sources, this seems to be a novel idea that Rabbeinu Bechayai came up with. Whether or not he had a source for it or it was just his own creation, I don't think really makes a difference because it's so beautiful. And I'm going to share it with you now. By the way, some people call him Rabbeinu Bechayai, some call him Rabbeinu Bachya. It really depends. There's both. Anyway, he says like this, and it's so beautiful. First of all, he talks about fasting. And this appears actually in Parshat Bereshit, I believe, Perek Aleph. And he first talks about fasting, Tanit. And he actually equates fasting to bringing an offering in the temple. And he explains because when you fast, you're not eating any food, so you're not reproducing blood cells, and you're not reproducing the fats in your body. And in Hebrew, we refer to them as dam and chelev. And those are the two things, the blood and the fats, that we either sprinkle on the Mizbeach or we put on the Mizbeach. We either sprinkle them on the altar, like we do for Korban Olah, the Olah offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering. We're always sprinkling blood. And for the fats, we take the fats out and we actually put those on the Mizbeach, on the altar, almost in every single offering, and we burn those fats on the Mizbeach. So we've taken away from this animal both its blood and its fats. And so too when we fast, we actually see a decrease in blood reproduction as well as in the fat reproduction. So there's an equation here. It's very similar. When we fast, it's almost like we're bringing ourselves as an offering to God. I think it's pretty an interesting insight. But also, and by the way, he's not the only one who says that, but here's what is novel to Rabbeinu Bechayai. He says that tears, remember, tears penetrate the gates of heaven. Tears is also like a korban. And he says because it is reminiscent of the nisuch hamayim, the water libation that we bring on Sukkot. Just like water, we pour water onto the Mizbeach. We also, when we cry, water drips from our eyes and pours onto the ground. So there's a similarity here between the two. And maybe this explains that Gemara in Brachot, that Talmud in the tractate Brachot, that said that even tears penetrate the heavens because perhaps, on a certain sense, when you cry, you've recreated that Mizbeach experience. And it's as though the mikdash still exists, as though the temple's still around, allowing your tears through your prayers to penetrate the heavens. I thought that was a beautiful insight by Rabbeinu Bechayai. And then he continues, actually, with the idea of water. Water is a fascinating thing. There's a lot of shows recently on water. I'm sure you've seen that famous doctor from Japan that talked about all the different crystals that appear in water. Different crystals, when you speak positively to the water, it creates beautiful crystals. And when we speak negatively to the water, it creates ugly crystals. It's all over YouTube. You could look at these. It's actually, I think, also on Gayam and many of these shows, they have this, all the interesting insights into water. But Rabbeinu Bechayai says something really interesting. Remember, he lived in the 1300s. And he said that tears come from water, right? Tears are water. Shehu mikol chesed, shehu hayamin, which comes from the energy or the power of chesed. In other words, there's a connection between water and kindness. God being kind. Water has, we talked about this once before, and I don't want to get into it, but there are 10 manifestations of God, and they're called Eser Sfirot, and one of them is Chesed, and one is Gvura. Chesed is where God is kind to us, and Gvura is Din, where He will punish us if we do something wrong. So water comes from the sphere of Chesed, and that comes from the Yamin, that is to the right. Yamin is always considered Chesed, and left is always considered Din, kindness And then this would be more gvura and din, which would be retribution or more of where God has to put on his judge hat. So what's going on here? On one level we said that tears bring us alive, and bring alive, the altar, the mizbeach, which then connects us to God. But water here also elicits chesed. And what's going on? Where is this? Why is that? And where's the chesed coming from? And why is it by definition chesed? So when you look at it on a very simple level, we know that our body is made up of something like 80% water, if I remember correctly my biology. And without water, we can't live. Without water, animals don't live. Without water, plants and vegetables, nothing can live in this world without water. So the chesed is a physical chesed. The kindness of water is that it keeps us alive. And remember, anybody who's kept alive by someone is considered he's saved the whole world. So we see that water is tremendous chesed, it's kindness, because it keeps us alive. But also water on a spiritual level keeps us alive. Because when we become ritually impure, what makes us pure again? Water. Water makes us pure again. It has the chesed to make us pure again that would allow us to then do things like go to the temple. Without water, we would not be able to actually go into the temple. We need to go to that mikvah. We need to go to that place where we dunk in the water to recreate us, reboot us on a certain level, allowing us to go into the temple, allowing us to eat trumot and masrot, allowing us to do many acts that would be prohibited if we didn't have this water. So there's an element of chesed both for our sustenance, our ability to live, and also our spiritual existence requires and needs water. And why is that? Where does that come from? And so if we look in the psukim, we look in the verses, right in the beginning of Genesis, of Bereshit, is a pasuk over there, V'nar yotzei me'eden, and the river would go out from Eden, from Gan Eden. Lashkot dagan, it would go out to water the gan, whatever that is, the garden, right? There's the river, there's Eden, there's Gan. It's unclear. These are things not for now, and I'm not sure I'll ever understand this completely. But here's the point. Umisham yipare, this river from Gan Eden splits off. Vayala arba rashim, it has four main tributaries, four main other rivers that come out of, depart from Gan Eden. And here I'm going to bring you an interesting Talmudic source in Masechet Tanit, Tractate Tanit, and this is on the 10th page, Yud. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, Kol ha'olam mitamtzit Gan Eden hu shoteh. The whole world is drinking from this source of Gan Eden. Okay? And actually he brings this pasuk that I just mentioned. V'nar yotzei me'eden. The waters of Eden are essentially feeding the entire world. And so when man goes into that mikvah, okay, when a person goes into that mikvah, into the body of water to purify himself, he's reconnecting to his original source, which is Gan Eden. He's getting to the point, he's recreating himself, rebooting himself, to the point where man was perfect. Man hadn't sinned yet, which was in Gan Eden. As we know, when Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, sinned, they left Gan Eden. So the water source is reconnecting us to Gan Eden. And hence why this water turns us into a person who can actually go to Har HaBayit, can go to the temple, because it's putting us in a place where the original Gan Eden was, which was where the Holy of Holies was. I think it's a very deep idea, but I think it explains a lot. We want to return to our reboot, to our original pure state. And here I'm going to end off with is that we started the rainy season. And it's very interesting. Rain is a bracha. It's a real blessing because it brings water, as we just explained, for so many, both physical and spiritual. But rain is a blessing overall. It's not just the rain. And here I'm going to quote you a final tractate from Ta'anit, once again, on the 8th page. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Gadol Yom HaGeshamim, the day when rain comes down is so great, so amazing. Shafilu pruta shebekis mitbarechet bo. Even a little bit of money in your pocket is blessed from it. In other words, the blessing of rain isn't just for the rain, it's for everything. When rain comes, it brings blessing for everybody and everything. And here's the verse they quote, Shneemar, Latet metar artzecha b'ito, Hashem will give his rain at the proper time when we need it, and the right amounts. Ulevarech et kol ma'aseh yadecha, and when that happens, he's going to bless everything. Everything we have, all our possessions get blessed. Everything we have is blessed. I want to leave you off with a blessing too. May Hashem bless all of you as we enter this period of the rainy season of kulo bracha. And there should be all bracha for everybody. Thank you for listening.